Well, we're just going to take one of the conditions at a time, see which answer choice violates that condition. Please tell me that I started recording. Oh my gosh. All right, what's up, guys? I want to take a look at an LSAT game. I believe this is from, well, no, I know this is from Prep Test 1. So if you are looking into the LSAT, you're probably familiar with the fact that LSAC, the Law School Admissions Council, which is the group that gives the test, releases previous tests. That is a great way to prepare, although not by any means necessarily the best way to prepare, just taking practice tests over and over again. But being that it is a good way, I wanted to take a quick look at some of the stuff from Prep Test 1. So I'll be working through that in the next few videos, and I figured what better way to start than with a logic puzzle. That's essentially what these games are, logic puzzles on steroids. In fact, if you remember, like, from 3rd grade, does Sally eat the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or does Johnny eat it, or who eats the tuna sandwich, like those puzzles you would do, and there was kind of like a grid this way and a grid this way, and you'd start Xing things out. That's essentially what these LSAT games are, but again, on steroids. You can't figure everything out for sure. In fact, as we're about to see in this first game, so I didn't start recording the video, and I worked like half the game before I realized I needed to press record. Wait, I'm going to double check. Okay, I am recording now. Very good. So in 3rd grade, you've got these logic puzzles, and you have like a diagram where you're marking stuff off, and these are like those logic puzzles, but on steroids. You can't figure everything out about them ahead of time. Even once you get into the questions, you can't always figure everything out about a given scenario. In fact, as we're about to see with this particular game, which I know a little bit about only because I recorded half of this video without actually pressing record a few minutes ago, we're going to see that we can't even really figure out that much about the setup. So it's really going to depend on us getting into the questions and figuring stuff out. But anyway, I'm going to try and do my work here on the actual piece of paper. Obviously, this is digital, not an actual piece of paper. But of course, you don't get scratch paper on the LSAT, so you'll need to get used to working on, just the space available to you on the actual page. So I'll be trying to do the same thing. I will be switching colors a little bit because, what can I say? I love colors. The first thing we want to do is look for whichever of these games is easiest. Again, at this point, I actually know this first game, questions 1 through 7, is not the easiest because I recorded a bunch of stuff without actually pressing record earlier. But we're going to start with it anyway because it does look pretty easy. So the games themselves are not typically arranged by order of difficulty. You're not going to start with easiest. The first game in the section will not be necessarily the easiest, and the last game will not necessarily be the hardest. You do want to work them in whatever order makes most sense for you, from easiest to most difficult. So one of these games is going to be easiest to you. That's the first one you want to work. One of these games is going to be hardest to you. That is the last one that you want to work. This one probably is not actually the easiest one for me, but it's easy enough that I probably wouldn't go looking for another one. So you open up your section, you start reading. If it seems easy enough to work, go ahead and work it. It's not super important that it literally be the easiest one. If it turns out we thought it was the easiest, but actually it was the 3rd easiest, well, that's probably just going to be an easy section for us, and that's an okay kind of problem to have. This one's easy enough because it's about arrangements. So there are 2 big categories that games typically fit into. Either they're asking you to arrange elements, or they're asking you to group elements, and then we kind of have subtypes after that. This one is that first category. They're asking us to arrange stuff. Exactly 6 trade representatives negotiate a treaty. Klosnik, Lundy, Manley, Neri, Osada, and Poirier. I think I'll just say P from now on. There are exactly 6 chairs evenly spaced around a circular table. The chairs are numbered 1 through 6 with successively numbered chairs next to each other, and chair number 1 next to chair number 6. All right, let's go ahead and start getting some stuff down. We don't want to be just kind of sitting there. We want to be moving our hands as much as possible. So we have these elements, K, L, M, N, O, and P, and they're fitting into these spaces, or these chairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is a little bit of a wrinkle in this particular case in that it's a circular table, so we do want to remember that chair 1 is in front of chair 6, or next to chair 6, however you want to say that, and in the same way, chair 1 is directly following chair 6. So that is something to keep in mind here. We have a diagram where we can just kind of keep track of information as we go along. That might be stuff we can figure out ahead of time, or it might be actual questions. Let's see, each chair is occupied by exactly one of the representatives. Following conditions apply. Okay, so let's get into the conditions. We don't want to have to go back and read them every time, so I'm just going to write down some little symbols for these conditions. Poirier sits immediately next to Neri. Again, I shouldn't be saying that name because I can't. P sits immediately next to N. So they don't tell us what order N and P are, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put N, P. I'm going to block them because I would remember they're right next to each other. Then I'll just put those little circular arrows to remind me that they can actually switch order. Londi sits immediately next to M, N, or both. Okay, so L is next to M, or L is next to N, or something like MLN. But again, in every one of these cases, I don't know about the order. So it could be ML, could be NL, could be NLM. Klosnik does not sit immediately next to Manley. Okay, this one's pretty good. So K and M cannot be next to each other. And again, I don't know about the order, so neither can M be next to K. M can't be in front of K either. If Osada sits immediately next to, if O sits immediately next to P, O does not sit immediately next to M. So if O has P around it, O will not have M around it, and we can also figure out from that if O does have M around it, that must mean O does not have P around it. Oh my gosh, Pop, no Mom. That's depressing. So at this point we want to say we've read our conditions and come up with little symbols to help us remember them without having to read them every time. We've got a diagram where we can put information as we're working through the different questions. We've got the elements that are asking us to place in order. Is there anything to do, or can we finally just start to jump into the questions? There is one more thing you want to do. You will often find that you can put different conditions together and deduce new information. In this case, since they don't really give us any concrete information, like P is in chair 2, or something like that, it's a little bit hard to come up with those. So I don't even necessarily have a deduction here, but I do notice, hold on one second, yeah. I do notice, like, this clue and this clue might end up interacting with each other. If N is next to P and N ends up next to L, then I've got a block of 3 people, right? In fact, it could even be a situation where I have a block of 4 people all figured out of the 6 people, M, L, N, and P. I don't have anyone that doesn't come up at all in the clues, so everyone is at least a little bit prescribed in terms of where they can be. But again, there's not a lot of concreteness, so at this point I would just go ahead and jump into the questions. Number 1 is a great example of a question that we want to look for at the beginning of every game. Which one of the following seating arrangements of the 6 representatives in chairs 1 through 6 would not violate the stated conditions? So the reason I like this is all I have to do is take one condition at a time and eliminate any answer choices that violate that condition, that break that rule, essentially. Hopefully, at the end of this process, once I've read through every condition and crossed off the answer choices that break it, there will only be one answer choice left. I say hopefully. That should happen if we're doing it correctly. If it doesn't, something else has gone wrong. So we're not going to jump into the answer choices. We're going to look at the condition. P sits immediately next to N. So I want to see, where are N and P next to each other, because that's good. So A is good there. B is good there. P next to N. C is good there. P next to N, right? P next to N, P next to N, P next to N. That's what I'm looking for every time. P next to N in D. But, oh my goodness, right there, P and N are not next to each other in E. Now, I would have to be a little bit careful here, because if P and N, why did I do, okay. P and N are not next to each other in E. Now, I do want to be a little bit careful here. Had N been listed first, remember, seats 1 and 6 are actually next to each other, and so I wouldn't have been able to eliminate for that reason. However, in this case, I can pretty obviously say, so E violates that first condition. It can't possibly be the right answer here. What do I want to do next? Oh my goodness, I have things to do, I guess. To check in with Brad. Okay, so the next rule, we've done the first rule. L sits immediately next to M, N, or both. So I'm going to look for L every time, and I'm just going to make sure, is L next to M, N, or both? And I can see right away in A, no, L is not next to M or N. L next to M, so I'm good on B. L next to M, I'm good on C. L next to M, I'm good on D. So I only got rid of one answer choice there. K does not sit immediately next to M. So do I see K and M next to each other in any of my remaining answer choices? K is not next to M and B. K is not next to M and C. Oh, D is tricky, tricky. K and M don't necessarily appear like they're next to each other, but again, they're seated in 1 and 6. It's a circular table, so in fact, they are next to each other right now, and that means that D is no good. Finally, if O is next to P, O should not be next to M, and vice versa. On B, O is next to neither M nor P, so that seems fine. On C, though, O is next to M and next to P. That is not okay, and so B has to be the best choice for number 1. From here, we want to look for questions that do give us some kind of information we can play around with. Usually these questions begin with if, and that's what's going on number 2. If L sits immediately next to P, which one of the following is a pair of representatives who must sit immediately next to each other? So it's a little tough to figure out how to put this on the diagram, but I suppose what's going on here, well, I don't suppose. If there's something they don't tell you for sure, and again, in this case, no person has gone in any particular seat, then you can kind of figure out, oh, I guess it doesn't matter much which particular seats people go in. It's more about their relationship to each other. And so what I'm going to do here for number 2 is I'm just going to say, you know what, let's just put L first, let's say, and see what else is going on. L sits immediately next to P, so P would have to go second in this case. Now, we know that L can go next to M, but doesn't necessarily have to, so I don't know. Well, I'm sorry, L is going to have to go next to either M or N, and remember in this case that's going to be in 6. So either M or N, but obviously not both, are going to end up in slot 6. Let's actually play out both of those scenarios. So let's see, maybe we can figure out what's happening if it's M, what's happening if it's N. Now if it's M, we know that K is not in seat number 5, right? And we still have to put O somewhere. We could, at this point, avoid both O being next to M and O being next to P, which is one of the other clues that we know about. No, I missed something. So N is supposed to be next to P. So if we put P in slot 2, N is going to have to go in slot 3, and M is going to have to go in slot 6. K can't be in 5, so K has to be in slot 4, and then the only other person left is O, who would end up in slot 5. So actually we can figure out this entire scenario, assuming we just place L first in that case. They want to know who must sit next to each other. K and O, yes, there it is. 4 and 5, in our particular scenario, K and O are next to each other. You don't need to check the others. There will only be one choice that works if you're doing this correctly, but of course you might be worried if you're doing it correctly. And so certainly right now, at this point in your practice process, you can go ahead and check. You do want to work towards not checking because of course that's going to help your pacing in the end. So I can say here, L and N, no, they were first and third, so they're not going to be next to each other. L and O, no, they were first and fifth. I suppose maybe I should be highlighting this like L and O. You can see they're not next to each other. M and N, no, third and sixth are not next to each other. M and P, no, not next to each other. But again, A, yes, they have to be next to each other. All right, very good. Number 3, if K sits directly between L and P, then M must sit directly between blank. Now again, they're not telling us the order, but it's a circle. They haven't told us where anyone is, so let's just kind of place them and see what happens. L, K, P. Let's see what happens now. Now P we know has to be next to N. That's kind of the clue that cracked it for us on the last one, so I want to make sure and get that taken care of right away. That's going to happen in slot 4. My only two elements left right now are O, I guess maybe I should be doing it up here, O and M, right? Now, there is always this clue down here with O, P, and M, but P can't be next to anybody else because P is already next to K and N, so I don't think I need to worry about that. L has to be next to M or N or both. All right, that's going to help us out. L can't be next to M because of course, L can't be next to N because of course N is in slot 4 right now. So L is going to have to be next to M, and the only way to work that out is to place M in that slot 6. Again, 6 is next to 1 in this game. That means that only O is left. It does not look like I'm breaking any rule with O. M and K are not next to each other. So once again, with just this one piece of information, we actually have figured the entire scenario out. If K sits directly between L and M, M must sit directly between blank. Well, I can see, M is between O and L, and so the best answer choice is B. And again, you could check the others, but you really don't need to at this point. If you find one that works, it has to be that choice. All right, what else have we got? Number 4, if N sits immediately next to M, then K can sit directly between blank. If N sits immediately next to M. All right, so let's go ahead and get that scenario down. N sits next to M. K can sit where? Well, again, what do we know about N? We know that wherever N is, P has to be around as well. That seems to be a pretty important clue in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and put P 6th. Again, that is next to 1 in this particular game. L needs to be next to N or M. L can't be next to N in this case, since N is already surrounded by N and P. So L is going to have to be next to M instead. That's going to go right there in our slot 3. O could be next to P, since we're not going to have that conflict with M, but doesn't have to be. K just can't be next to O. So at this point, we have a 50-50, right? So I've got either O in this slot, or K, or the other way around. But it doesn't look like it has to be any particular way. And indeed, this question, you can kind of see, Klosnik can sit directly between blank. Well, in our scenarios, K was either between L and O, or between O and P. So presumably when we look up at the answer choices right now, only one of those is going to be there. L and O, or O and P, and I can see, there it is, answer choice E. Not L and M, not L and P, right? Yeah, L and O, O and P. Not N and O, not N and P, but O and P. Yeah, just double checking again. So number 4 is answer choice E. All right, we have 3 more, and unfortunately you can see we're kind of running out of room, but maybe we can get at least one more in here. Just number 5. We'll get down there at the bottom. If L sits immediately next to M, which of the following is a complete and accurate list of the representatives, any one of whom could also sit immediately next to L? So L is next to M, and then we want to know who else could go in that slot. So this time I'm going to move over so I can see it really clearly there in slot 1. Who else can end up in slot 1? We know that K can't go 4th. We know L could be next to N. I don't know that L has to be, but it definitely could be something like N, P, O, and K. Like, that's a possibility. So N has to be on this list. Yeah, just double checking that does not violate any of our rules. And for that matter, if I put P there instead, that would mean N would be over here. And again, otherwise it's the same scenario. O is not next to P, O or M is not next to K. We're not breaking any rules. So either N or P have to be on this list. A does not have N or P. B has N but not P. C has P but not N. D has P but not N. Only E has them both, so I guess it has to be E. And again, you could check the others, make sure that it's okay for K and it's okay for O, but really by process of elimination, it's going to have to be E. All right, I guess I'm going to come up here maybe and do number 6 on top of the diagram so I can still track along. If L sits immediately next to N, which one of the following statements must be false? Okay, so always remember this is the opposite of a could be true. So I'm going to eliminate choices that could be true, and I'll just circle whatever is left over at the end. If L is next to N, so let's go ahead and put them first and second. N, of course, always has to be next to P. L is next to M, so I'm sorry, L is next to N, so I don't have to put M any other particular place. I do want to keep in mind right now, though, I have 3 slots, and M and K have not taken up any of them, and I have to keep them apart. So I'm going to do another 50-50. Either it's M in slot 4 and K in slot 6, or it's the other way around. And then I only end up with one particular slot for O, and that is our slot 5. So it has to look something like this if we put L first. They want to know what must be false. K sits immediately next to O. No, that's definitely possible, right? So I can go ahead and eliminate that. Again, I'm eliminating things that could be true. L sits next to M. That's definitely possible. I can see right here, they could be next to each other. Again, 6 is next to 1 in this game, so I can get rid of B. O sits next to P. That is impossible, right? O and P, I can see no matter what I do, they're going to have that one slot, M or K, between them. So that should be the answer. I can go ahead and stop right there. Again, I know early on you're going to be tempted to go ahead and check. That's okay for now, but it is going to be a big help to your pacing if you can start having some confidence and just say, oh, C is the one that doesn't work. N sits directly between L and P. In fact, that's exactly what we ended up seeing. You can see right here, L and P, right? Or O sits directly between K and M. Of course, that is definitely what's going on there. And so, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, we're correct. It is answer choice C. All right, I hope that was helpful to you guys. That is an example of how you would work through a game. We want to treat this like the Sudoku puzzle on steroids that it is. You want to make sure you have some kind of diagram where you can keep track of information. They don't offer you a lot of space, unfortunately, but you can make the best with what they do offer you. You want to make sure you know what the elements are that you're placing, typically either into certain arrangements or into certain kinds of groups. You want to make sure that those conditions that they give you, you've symbolized them somehow so you don't have to go back to the actual sentences over and over again. And then, of course, you want to make your deductions. This game did not have a ton of deductions. There wasn't that much overlap in the clues themselves. And even more importantly, there wasn't anything concrete from the clues where, like, K does go first. So we just didn't have a lot of deductions here, and that does happen sometimes. Obviously, you can see the trade-off in this case was that every single question gave us if blank happens, and then we could just try that out and see what was going on. I hope that was helpful to you. Like and make sure to subscribe if you're looking for more LSAT information or test prep in general. If there is something that you saw me do wrong here or that you think I could have done better or more efficiently, I am always ears. Please comment down below and I will be sure to take a look at that and figure it out for the future. Thanks for watching, and I am talking to nobody in my kitchen, so this feels very silly.